The doctor's words hung in the air, sterile and sharp, like the scent of the antiseptic wipes on her desk. The prognosis isn't good, Stella. Just like that, the world I knew, the one filled with lazy Sunday mornings with Quinton and dreams of a future we'd meticulously planned, tilted on its axis. My name is Stella, by the way, or at least it was. Now, I sometimes feel like a ghost haunting my own life. Before the diagnosis, life was good. Simple, maybe, but good. Quinton and I had just celebrated our 5th anniversary. He'd surprised me with a weekend trip to a little cabin by the lake, the same one where he'd proposed. We'd spent 2 days laughing, hiking and cuddling by the fire, talking about finally starting a family. He'd trace patterns on my arm and whisper, "Next year, Stell, next year we'll hear tiny footsteps." I remember the warmth of his hand in mine, the scent of pine and wood smoke, the absolute certainty I felt in our future. We had our little nest egg, carefully saved, earmarked for a down payment on a bigger house, for baby things, for life. Then came the fatigue, the unexplainable bruises, the weight loss I initially celebrated before it became alarming. Tests led to more tests, hushed consultations, and finally that sterile room with Dr. April. A rare, aggressive form of, well, the name doesn't matter. What mattered was the price tag for the experimental treatment that offered the only sliver of hope, a number so large it made my breath catch. Quinton was a rock at first. He held me while I sobbed, his own eyes wet. "We'll fight this, Stell, together, whatever it takes." His mother Ingrid and his sister Kendall rushed over, bearing casseroles and platitudes. "Oh, you poor thing," Ingrid had said, her voice dripping with a sympathy that felt a little too practiced. She patted my hand, her rings cold against my skin. "But you're strong. We're all here for you." Kendall, younger than Quinton by a few years, echoed her mother. "Absolutely, Stella. We'll do anything. You just focus on getting better." In the days that followed, our kitchen table became a war room. Printouts of treatment protocols, insurance documents that might as well have been written in ancient Greek, and bank statements were spread across its surface. "The savings," I'd said, my voice thin, tracing the balance on our joint account statement. It's almost enough for the initial phase." Quinton nodded, his jaw tight. "We'll make it enough, Stell. I can pick up extra shifts. We'll manage." But even then, amidst the flurry of supposed support, little things pricked at my unease. Kendall, during a visit meant to cheer me up, spent a solid hour lamenting her own struggles. "It's just month after month, nothing," she'd sighed, dramatically dabbing at her eyes. "The doctors say IVF is our best shot, but it's so incredibly expensive, and each cycle, it's like throwing money into a black hole. Quinton, you know how much I want a baby, how much Mom wants a grandchild." Ingrid, who was there, nodded sympathetically. "It's true, dear. A baby would bring so much joy to this family, especially now with everything." I remember feeling a small, cold knot form in my stomach. My life was on the line, and here they were discussing Kendall's fertility treatments as if they were of equal or perhaps greater importance. Quinton had just squeezed my shoulder, a strained smile on his face. "One thing at a time, Ken. Stella's health is the priority." But his eyes flickered towards his mother, a familiar deference in his gaze. The discussions about my treatment continued. Dr. April was pushing for us to start as soon as possible. "The window of opportunity for this trial is narrow, Stella," she'd explained gently over the phone. "And your condition, it's not waiting." Fear was a constant companion, a cold dread that settled in my bones. The savings were our lifeline, my lifeline. I'd look at Quinton searching for reassurance, and he'd offer it. But sometimes his gaze seemed distant, troubled. One evening I was lying on the sofa, a wave of nausea making the room spin. I'd drifted off, but a sound from the kitchen pulled me back. Quinton and Ingrid were talking, their voices low, urgent. I couldn't make out all the words, just fragments. "A significant amount, Mum," Quinton was saying, his voice strained. "Are you sure?" Ingrid's reply was firmer, sharper. "It's what's best for everyone, Quinton. Kendall deserves her chance at happiness. She needs this. We all need this." A pause, then Quinton again, quieter. "But Stella's treatment, the funds, Stella needs to have faith," Ingrid said, her tone dismissive. "There are always other options. Miracles happen every day. Kendall's miracle can't wait." My stomach didn't just clench, it plummeted. A chance at happiness? Kendall's miracle? What about mine? I lay there, the Afghan suddenly feeling like a lead blanket, a terrifying premonition washing over me. The next morning Quinton avoided my eyes. He busied himself making coffee, his movements jerky. "Did you sleep okay?" I asked, my voice hoarse. Fine," he mumbled, not looking at me. The air was thick with unspoken words, with a dread so palpable I could almost taste it. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the core, that something was terribly wrong. The storm hadn't just gathered, it was about to break. The days that followed were a blur of increasing weakness and a gnawing anxiety that overshadowed the physical pain. The cough worsened, a dry, hacking sound that tore at my lungs. Getting out of bed felt like climbing a mountain. Dr. April called, her voice gentle but firm. "Stella, we need to schedule that first round. Time is a factor." I found Quinton in the living room, staring blankly at the television. The bank statement from the day before lay on the coffee table, unopened. "Quinton," I began, my voice barely a whisper. "We need to talk about the money, about what I overheard you and your mother saying." He flinched, his eyes finally meeting mine, filled with a guilt that was almost pathetic. "Stell, What did she mean, Kendall deserves her chance? What miracle can't wait?" My own voice was rising, fueled by a desperate fear. "The account, Quinton, I checked it this morning. It's nearly empty." He looked down, fiddling with a loose thread on the armrest. "We had to, Stella." "Had to what?" I pressed, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Quinton, that money was for my treatment, my life." Just then the front door opened and Ingrid swept in, Kendall trailing behind her, a smug little smile playing on her lips. Ingrid's eyes, hard and assessing, landed on me. "Quinton, darling, is everything all right?" she asked, her voice smooth as silk. "No, Ingrid, everything is not all right," I snapped, a surge of adrenaline momentarily clearing the fog in my head. "The money for my treatment is gone, and I think you know why." Ingrid raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "Stella, dear, there's no need for hysterics. We did what was necessary for this family." "Necessary?" I choked out. "Necessary to leave me to die? Don't be so dramatic," Ingrid said coolly. "Kendall needed those funds. Her IVF treatments, they're very delicate, very time-sensitive. This was her last viable chance for a baby, her miracle baby, a joy for the whole family." Kendall piped up, her voice saccharine. "And I'm pregnant, Stella. It worked. We're going to have a baby," she beamed, placing a protective hand on her still flat stomach. I stared at them, dumbfounded. The casual cruelty, the absolute self-absorption, it was breathtaking. You took the money meant to save my life for IVF?" I looked at Quinton, pleading. "Tell me this isn't true." He wouldn't meet my gaze. He just mumbled, "Kendall's happiness is important, Stell. Mom's right, it's a joy for all of us." "And what about my joy, Quinton?" I whispered, the fight draining out of me. "What about my life?" Ingrid stepped forward, her expression unyielding. "You should be supportive, Stella. Think of the family. And as for your situation, well, you just need to pray for your own miracle. Have a little faith. Pray for my own miracle." The words echoed in the sudden silence of the room, a death knell to any hope I had left. They had chosen Kendall's dream over my existence. The essential consultations, the first round of treatment Dr. April had stressed was so critical. They were now utterly, impossibly out of reach. "Get out," I said, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. "Now, Stella," Ingrid began. "Get out, all of you." I pointed a trembling finger towards the door. Quinton finally looked at me, a flicker of something, shame, regret, in his eyes. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared. He turned and followed his mother and sister out the door, leaving me alone in the suffocating silence. The betrayal was a physical ache, sharper than the pain in my chest. I sank onto the sofa, the unopened bank statement a cruel mockery on the table. My lifeline, severed by the very people who had vowed to protect me. Later that week, I heard them. Laughter and music drifted from next door, where Ingrid lived. I dragged myself to the window. Balloons bobbed in their yard. A banner proclaimed, "Kendall's Miracle Baby Shower." Figures moved around the garden, Quinton, Ingrid, Kendall, Lucas, their friends, all smiles and celebration. They were toasting Kendall's conception, her miracle. I stood there, clutching the window frame for support, watching them. Each burst of laughter, each cheer, felt like another nail in my coffin. I was alone, abandoned, my body failing, my hope extinguished. As the sun began to set, casting long, mournful shadows across my living room, I felt my life slipping away, not just from the illness, but from the crushing weight of their callousness. The storm had broken, and I was drowning in its wake. The days bled into weeks, each one a little dimmer than the last. I was a ghost in my own home, a prisoner of my failing body and their casual cruelty. The Baileys, because I couldn't think of them as my family anymore, not even Quinton, were blatant in their joy. Kendall would text Quinton ultrasound pictures, which he'd sometimes leave on the kitchen counter, little grainy images of her miracle. Ingrid would call, her voice dripping with false concern. "Just checking in, Stella dear. Are you keeping your spirits up?" Then she'd launch into a detailed account of Kendall's latest pregnancy milestone, the nursery decorations, the designer maternity clothes. My friend Holly tried to break through. She'd call, her voice tight with anger on my behalf. "Stella, this is insane. You can't let them do this to you. I'm coming over." But when she did, Ingrid would often intercept her at the door. "Stella's resting, Holly. She's very weak, you know. Best not to excite her." Or Kendall would appear, all radiant pregnancy glow, and steer Holly away with talk of baby names and cravings, effectively blocking any real conversation with me. I was too exhausted, too broken to fight their gatekeeping. The treatment Dr. April had initially prescribed was a distant memory. Instead, I was on a generic palliative care regimen, the kind that manages symptoms but offers no real hope of a cure. It was all we, or rather I, could afford with the scraps left in my personal account. Each pill I swallowed felt like a surrender. One particularly bleak afternoon, confined to the sofa, the television droning mindlessly, I found myself staring at my laptop. Despair was a heavy cloak, but beneath it, a tiny, stubborn ember refused to be extinguished. I remembered a conversation with Dr. April from months ago, before the full extent of the financial devastation was clear. She'd mentioned a highly specialised experimental research trial for my specific condition. At the time, it seemed like a long shot, something to consider if the primary treatment failed. Ingrid had even scoffed when I'd mentioned it. "Grasping at straws, Stella, you need to be realistic." Realistic? The irony was a bitter pill. With nothing left to lose, I started researching. My fingers, weak and trembling, typed keywords into the search bar. Hours passed. I found the trial, a niche program run by a small research institute, looking for very specific patient profiles. The application was complex, demanding detailed medical history, genetic markers, a whole host of information I painstakingly compiled from my records. It felt like a monumental effort, each click of the mouse a victory against the encroaching darkness. I submitted the application, not with hope, but with a kind of detached fatalism. What else was there to do? Weeks crawled by. My world shrank to the four walls of our house. No, Quinton's house. He was rarely home, spending most of his time with his mother and sister, basking in the glow of Kendall's impending motherhood. When he was around, he treated me with a sort of distant pity, like a dying pet he couldn't quite bring himself to euthanize. I was fading. I knew it. The cough was relentless, sleep was a fleeting visitor, and food tasted like ash. I'd catch my reflection sometimes, hollow eyes, sallow skin, a stranger staring back. This is it, I'd think. This is how it ends. Betrayed, broke, and alone. Then, one morning, the phone rang. I almost didn't answer. It was probably Ingrid wanting to gloat about Kendall's latest craving for artisanal pickles. But something made me reach for it. "Hello?" My voice was a dry croak. "Stella, it's Dr. April Shaw." My heart gave a weak flutter. Dr. April. I hadn't spoken to her since the Baileys had pulled the plug on my treatment fund. "Dr. April," I managed. "Stella, I'm calling about the research trial you applied for, the one at the Thornton Institute." I braced myself for rejection, for another door slamming shut. "We've been reviewing your case, your unique biological markers," she continued, her voice holding a strange note, almost excited. "And the initial data from your samples in conjunction with the trial's protocol. Stella, it's remarkable." Remarkable? What was remarkable? My rapid decline? "Not only are you showing signs of going into remission," Dr. April said, her words hitting me with the force of a physical blow. "Remission?" I gripped the phone tighter, my knuckles white. Was I hearing correctly? "But Stella," she went on, her voice quickening, "the unique markers from your case, combined with the trial's findings, there's something else, something potentially huge, commercially. We need to talk, urgently. Remission." The word bounced around in my skull, refusing to settle, and then something potentially huge, commercially. It was too much. I felt a dizzying surge, not of nausea this time, but of something wild and unfamiliar. Adrenaline. "Dr. April, I don't understand," I stammered, my mind reeling. "Remission? How?" "The trial, Stella. Your specific genetic makeup responded to the experimental therapy in a way we hadn't fully anticipated. It's early days, but the indicators are incredibly strong. Your latest blood work, it's like night and day." I sank back against the pillows, the phone pressed hard against my ear. For months I'd been preparing to die. Now, this. And the other thing?" I asked, my voice barely a breath. "The commercial potential. That's what we need to discuss in person," Dr. April said. "It relates to how your system processed the trial medication, some unique byproducts we've identified. Your background is in product development, isn't it, before you got sick?" "Yes," I confirmed, a flicker of my old self igniting. "Market research, product viability, launch strategies." "Exactly," Dr. April said. "I think you'll see the possibilities immediately. Can you come to my office tomorrow? Say 10 o'clock. "I'll be there," I said, a new strength in my voice. The meeting with Dr. April was a revelation. She laid out the science, complex but clear. The trial medication, in interacting with my rare biological markers, had not only fought the illness but had also produced a unique compound. This compound, she explained, showed incredible promise as a key ingredient in a new type of diagnostic tool for early detection of several aggressive conditions. And because you meticulously documented your body's responses, even minor side effects, during the initial phase of your illness, data most patients wouldn't think to track with such detail, you've essentially co-authored the discovery of its application. My mind, sluggish for so long, was suddenly racing. My product development instincts kicked in. I saw it. the unmet market need, the potential for a revolutionary product, the path from lab to launch. A cold, hard clarity settled over me. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about more. This is huge, I said, looking at the data Dr. April presented. Potentially life-changing for millions, she agreed. And for you, Stella, you're a co-discoverer. There are patents to be filed, a company to be built, if you're up for it. Up for it. A slow smile spread across my face. Dr. April, I said, I think I'm very much up for it. The first call I made after leaving Dr. April's office wasn't to Quinton. It was to a name I'd found online, a lawyer specializing in intellectual property and business startups, Jesse Gibson. Mr. Gibson, I said, my voice firm, my name is Stella. I have a significant business opportunity I need to discuss, and I also need to initiate divorce proceedings. Jesse was sharp, no nonsense. We met the next day. I laid out everything, the medical breakthrough, the commercial potential, and the Bailey's betrayal, the drained accounts, the emotional abandonment, the pray for your own miracle speech. I handed him copies of bank statements I'd quietly printed, showing the large withdrawals coinciding with Kendall's IVF treatments. This is quite a situation, Stella, Jesse said, leaning back in his chair, a thoughtful expression on his face. The business side is incredibly promising. The divorce, that's straightforward financial abandonment. Gross misconduct, actually. I want to be free of them, I said, and I want to ensure they can't touch a penny of what I'm about to build. Understood, Jesse nodded. We'll file immediately, and we'll set up your new venture airtight. Over the next few weeks, I operated in stealth mode. I attended follow-up appointments, my strength slowly returning. The cough subsided. Colour returned to my cheeks. I ate, really ate, for the first time in months. In my interactions with the Baileys, which were minimal, I played the part of the fading invalid. I was quiet, weak, letting them believe I was still declining. It wasn't hard. They were so wrapped up in Kendall's pregnancy they barely noticed me anyway. Quinton, however, did notice the slight physical improvements. One evening he found me looking over some papers at the kitchen table, preliminary patent forms Jesse had sent. "Feeling a bit better, Stell?" he asked, a hint of surprise in his voice. He still saw me as a lost cause, I could tell. "A little," I murmured, not meeting his eyes. He hesitated, then said, Good. Listen, Stell, I was wondering, now that things are, well, settling down, maybe you could sign some papers, just to simplify our finances, tie up loose ends." I looked up, meeting his gaze. Simplify their finances. He meant secure any remaining joint assets for himself, absolve himself of any further responsibility. The audacity was stunning. A weak, wan smile touched my lips. "Of course, Quinton," I said softly. I'll look them over." He patted my shoulder, a gesture of dismissive relief. "Thanks, Stell. You're a trooper." I watched him walk away, the papers he wanted me to sign still on the table. The only papers I'd be signing any time soon were divorce documents and the incorporation papers for my new company. My miracle was taking shape, and it had nothing to do with prayer and everything to do with a phoenix rising from the ashes of their betrayal. The next few months were a whirlwind. While the Baileys were busy planning baby showers and debating nursery colour schemes, I was building an empire in secret. With Jesse's expert guidance, Phoenix Biomed was born. We filed patents, drafted a solid business plan, and began discreetly approaching investors. The science, coupled with my personal story of recovery, which we framed carefully, focusing on the breakthrough, not the betrayal, was compelling. Initial seed funding came through faster than I dared hope. My strength returned in leaps and bounds. The pallor was replaced by a healthy glow, the weakness by a wiry energy. I found a small furnished apartment across town, a clean slate. The day I moved out was quiet. Quinton was, predictably, at Ingrid's, no doubt discussing Kendall's latest craving or discomfort. I left the keys on the counter, along with a neatly folded set of divorce papers. The process server delivered his copy later that afternoon. The call came that evening. Quinton, sputtering, incredulous. "Stella, what the hell is this? Divorce papers? Are you serious?" "Perfectly serious, Quinton," I replied, my voice calm, almost detached. "But why? I thought we were simplifying things." "We are," I said. "I'm simplifying my life by removing you from it. Financial abandonment is the official term, I believe. Your lawyer can explain it." He blustered, he pleaded, he accused. I listened unmoved. When he finally ran out of steam, I simply said, "Goodbye, Quinton," and hung up. Ingrid called next, her voice sharp with indignation. "Stella, I cannot believe your ingratitude. After everything Quinton has done for you, everything we've done for you." "Done for me?" I laughed, a short, harsh sound. "You mean leaving me to die while you funded Kendall's designer baby dreams?" "Yes, I remember that vividly." "Kendall is carrying this family's future," Ingrid shrieked. "You're just being bitter and selfish." "Perhaps," I said, "but soon I'll be bitter, selfish, and very, very successful, and divorced. You'd be surprised what one can achieve with the right motivation." I ended the call before she could reply. Aunties. They were shocked, of course, but mostly dismissive. In their minds, I was still the sick, penniless woman they'd discarded. They assumed I'd get a meagre settlement, if anything, and fade into obscurity. They had no idea what was brewing. Kendall's pregnancy, meanwhile, wasn't the fairy tale journey they'd envisioned. Whispers started to circulate through the family grapevine, which Holly, still a loyal friend, occasionally tapped into for me. Unexpected complications, multiple specialist visits, mounting medical bills that weren't fully covered by her insurance. The irony wasn't lost on me. They'd poured our life savings into her miracle, and now that miracle was proving to be a costly endeavour. Their own finances, already strained by the lavish IVF cycles and Kendall's extravagant lifestyle, were starting to show serious cracks. One afternoon I ran into Ingrid at the supermarket. She looked flustered, her usual immaculate composure slightly frayed. She spotted me in the produce aisle and her lips thinned. "Stella," she said, her tone laced with condescension. "Good to see you out and about. I trust you're not being too much of a burden on Quinton now, with the separation." I smiled, a genuinely amused smile this time. "Oh, don't worry about Quinton, Ingrid. I'm sure he's managing just fine with his priorities. I picked up a perfect ripe avocado, and I'm doing wonderfully, thank you." Her eyes narrowed, but before she could deliver another barb, her phone rang. I heard her hiss into it. "What do you mean the card was declined? Try it again." A few weeks later, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I answered cautiously. "Stella, it's Quinton." His voice was hesitant, strained, not angry this time, but desperate. "What do you want, Quinton? Listen, Stell, I know things have been difficult, but I was wondering, could you possibly help me out with a loan? Just a small one to tide things over." "A loan?" The audacity was almost comical. "A loan for what, Quinton?" he stammered. It's complicated. Family obligations. Things have gotten a bit tight." "Family obligations. Kendall, of course." "You mean Kendall's medical bills?" I asked, my voice like ice. "The ones for the miracle baby you bankrupted me to conceive?" Silence on the other end. Then a weak, "It's not like that, Stella. It's just... we didn't expect." "You didn't expect consequences," I finished for him. "You didn't expect that draining every last penny from our joint account, money meant for my survival, might have repercussions beyond me simply disappearing quietly. Please, Stella," he begged, "just a little, for old time's sake." Old time's sake. The memory of him standing by while his mother told me to pray for my own miracle flashed in my mind. the image of their celebratory party while I wasted away. "No, Quinton," I said, my voice flat and final. "I don't think so. You made your choices. Now live with them." I hung up, a cold satisfaction settling in. They were in deeper financial trouble than I'd realised. They hadn't just seen me as disposable, they'd actively sacrificed me for their own selfish desires, assuming there would be no price to pay. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. Phoenix Biomed was no longer a secret whispered between me, Jessie, and a handful of investors. It was a tangible entity, sleek offices buzzing with activity, a state-of-the-art lab, and a team of brilliant minds working towards our launch. The diagnostic tool, born from my darkest days, was refined, tested, and ready. We named it Aurasight. The divorce from Quinton was finalised. Jessie had been meticulous. The evidence of financial abandonment was irrefutable. Bank statements showing massive transfers to accounts clearly linked to Kendall's fertility clinics, all while my medical needs were critical and documented. Quinton, without the Bailey family war chest to fund a decent lawyer, as their own funds were now mysteriously dwindling, barely put up a fight. He looked defeated, older. The settlement was heavily in my favour, not that there was much left on his side to claim. My focus was on Phoenix Biomed. The settlement was just tying up a very ugly loose end. With the launch date for Aurasight set, our PR team began its carefully orchestrated campaign. Press releases went out to major medical journals, tech blogs, and financial news outlets. Invitations to the launch event, a prestigious affair at a downtown innovation centre, were dispatched. I made sure a few select invitations and copies of the more prominent press features found their way to addresses I knew well. Ingrid's home, Kendall's new, heavily mortgaged house, and even Quinton's cramped bachelor apartment. I imagined them seeing the name Phoenix Biomed and my name, Stella, listed as CEO and co-founder. They'd probably scoff. Stella's little project, Ingrid might say, probably some charity thing, trying to keep herself busy. They were still blissfully arrogantly unaware of the scale, the funding, the revolutionary nature of what we were about to unleash. Their world was shrinking, consumed by Kendall's impending due date and the ever-growing pile of bills, while mine was about to explode onto the scene. Kendall's due date was just a week after our scheduled launch. The timing was exquisite, a delicious coincidence I hadn't planned, but certainly appreciated. Ingrid, of course, was planning a welcome baby Bailey extravaganza, determined to maintain appearances despite their tightening financial noose. A few days before the Phoenix Biomed launch, my phone rang. It was Ingrid. Her voice was syrupy sweet, the kind she used when she was about to stick the knife in. "Stella, dear, so good to hear your voice," she began, though I hadn't said a word. "I was just calling to invite you to Kendall's baby shower. It's next Saturday. A small, intimate affair, of course." Intimate, I thought, like a piranha feeding frenzy. This wasn't an invitation. It was a power play. A chance to rub my nose in Kendall's miracle one last time before the baby arrived. "That's thoughtful of you, Ingrid," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Yes, well, we're all so excited," she gushed. "Kendall is just radiant. This baby is such a blessing, a true gift. Perhaps you could bring a small gift, though I imagine things are tight for you, dear, after the unpleasantness with Quinton." The condescension was thick enough to spread on toast. I could almost hear the smirk in her voice. A slow, cold smile spread across my own face. This was too perfect. "Actually, Ingrid," I said, my voice calm, almost serene, "I wouldn't miss seeing Kendall get exactly what she deserves. And don't worry about a gift from me." I paused, letting the silence stretch for a beat. As it happens, I have a rather significant announcement of my own around that time, something I think the whole family will find illuminating. There was a slight pause on her end. "Oh," she said, a flicker of something unreadable in her tone. Well, that's nice for you, dear. Don't be late for the shower. Wouldn't dream of it, I replied, though I had no intention of attending her charade. My own show was about to begin, and it was going to be far more spectacular. The stage was set. The players were in position. All that was left was the unveiling. The launch event for Phoenix Biomed was electric. The Innovation Centre buzzed with anticipation. Scientists, investors, media, all gathered to witness the unveiling of AuraSight. I stood backstage, calm and centred, Holly giving my hand a reassuring squeeze. You got this, Stella, she whispered. Show them. As I stepped onto the stage, the applause was a warm wave. I spoke about resilience, about innovation born from adversity, carefully omitting the personal betrayals, but hinting at the crucible that had forged Phoenix Biomed. Then, the big reveal, AuraSight. The data, the projections, the sheer life-saving potential of the technology. The room erupted. Simultaneously, across town, Kendall's baby shower was likely in full swing. I imagined Ingrid holding court, Kendall preening, Lucas looking vaguely uncomfortable, and Quinton was probably trying to scrounge enough cash for another drink. The news of Phoenix Biomed and AuraSight didn't just make a splash, it was a tsunami. Our PR team had timed it perfectly. By mid-afternoon, major news outlets were running the story. Medical miracle to market marvel. Stella and Phoenix Biomed revolutionise diagnostics. AuraSight, the future of early detection. My face, once pale and gaunt, now confident and smiling, was suddenly everywhere. The first sign of the Bailey's world imploding came via a frantic text from Holly, who had a friend at the shower. OMG, Stella, Ingrid just got a call. Something about her stock portfolio tanking. She looks like she's seen a ghost. I knew what that was. A major competitor in the diagnostics field, one Ingrid had often boasted about investing heavily in, no doubt with funds that should have been mine, had seen its share price plummet as news of AuraSight's superior technology spread. Then the reporters started connecting the dots. My illness, the miraculous recovery linked to the research trial, the name Phoenix rising from the ashes. The narrative was irresistible. The story of my survival was now inextricably linked to the story of their downfall. I was in the VIP lounge, shaking hands and accepting congratulations, when my phone vibrated. Quinton. I let it go to voicemail. He called again, and again. Finally, I saw him pushing through the crowd, his face ashen, his eyes wild. Security moved to intercept him, but I waved them off. Let him come. Stella! He gasped, grabbing my arm. His expensive suit, probably bought for the baby shower, looked rumpled, his hair dishevelled. Stella, what have you done? Done, Quinton? I asked, my voice cool, level. I built a company. I launched a revolutionary product. I'm saving lives. What have you done lately, besides attend parties? The money. Ingrid's investments. Oh, they're wiped out, he stammered. The bank just called in Lucas's business loan. Creditors are calling Kendall, demanding payment for all those treatments. We're ruined. Ruined, I echoed, tilting my head. That's a strong word. I prefer to think of it as consequences. His face crumpled. But how could you? After everything you did, you mean? I stepped closer, my voice dropping so only he could hear. You left me to die, Quinton. You and your mother and your precious sister. You drained our savings, money meant for my life, to fund Kendall's miracle. You told me to pray for my own miracle. I paused, letting the words hang in the air. His eyes were wide with dawning horror, the full impact of his actions finally crashing down on him. Well, guess what, Quinton? I continued, my voice like chipped ice. I got it. I gestured around the opulent room at the successful, powerful people celebrating my triumph. This is my miracle, and your ruin. That's just the direct result of you bankrupting me for Kendall, You made your bed. Now lie in it." Tears streamed down his face. "Please, Stella. There must be something. I'm begging you." "Begging?" I almost laughed. "Did you beg for my life when your mother decided Kendall's IVF was more important?" "No, you stood by and watched." Just then his phone rang. He fumbled for it, his hand shaking. I could hear Kendall's hysterical voice on the other end. "Quinton, the doctors, the baby. There are complications. They say it's the stress. I'm going into labour early." He looked at me, his face a mask of despair and panic. "Kendall, the baby." Security finally reached us, gently but firmly taking his arms. "Sir, you need to leave." As they escorted a sobbing, hysterical Quinton away, I turned back to the assembled press, who had witnessed the tail end of the confrontation with avid interest. A small, cold smile touched my lips. "Phoenix Biomed," I said, my voice clear and strong, carrying across the room, "is not just about innovation. It's about resilience. It's about surviving against the odds and ensuring that those who try to extinguish your flame only end up fueling your rise." The implication hung heavy in the air, as sharp and undeniable as the truth. The reckoning was complete. The dust from the explosion that was Phoenix Biomed's launch and the Bailey family's subsequent implosion began to settle, not into a comfortable quiet, but into a new, stark reality. My reality was one of board meetings, research symposiums, and the quiet satisfaction of seeing Aurasight begin its work in clinics around the country. Their reality, well, that was a different story. Holly, now a valued board member at Phoenix Biomed and my closest confidant, kept me updated, not out of malice, but because she knew I needed to see the full arc of their karma. Kendall had the baby, she told me over coffee one morning, a few weeks after the launch. A boy. Apparently, the birth was difficult, stressful, just like her call to Quinton during the launch party. "Is he okay, the baby?" I asked, a flicker of something I couldn't quite name stirring within me. "Healthy, from what I hear," Holly said, stirring her latte. "But the joy, it's pretty muted. They're living in a tiny rental now. Lucas's business folded completely, those loans being called in with a final nail. Ingrid sold her house to cover some of their debts, but it wasn't enough. They're broke, Stella, properly, unequivocally broke. Socially, they were pariahs. The story of their callousness towards me, juxtaposed with my dramatic rise, had become local legend. Old friends avoided them. The society pages Ingrid once graced now whispered about their downfall. Quinton, Holly reported, was a ghost of his former self. The charm, the easy confidence, all gone. He was working a string of temp jobs, barely making ends meet. He'd tried calling me a few more times, leaving rambling, incoherent voicemails filled with apologies and pleas. I never listened to them fully. There was nothing he could say that would change what he'd done, or what he'd allowed to be done. Ingrid, the matriarch who had orchestrated my near demise, was apparently a shadow. The imperious pronouncements were replaced by a bitter, resentful silence. She was living with Kendall and the new baby, the miracle that had cost them everything, in that cramped rental, the irony apparently lost on her. One afternoon my assistant buzzed me. "Stella, there's a woman here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment. And Ingrid?" I paused. "Ingrid. Here." "Send her in," I said, a strange calm settling over me. She looked diminished. The expensive clothes were still there, but they hung on her differently, lacking their former authority. Her hair, usually perfectly coiffed, was slightly askew. Her eyes, when they met mine, were filled not with the old arrogance, but with a desperate, pleading look. "Stella," she began, her voice raspy, we need help." I leaned back in my chair, the sleek leather cool against my back. My office overlooked the city, a panorama of success. "Help?" I repeated. An interesting choice of words, Ingrid. The last time we discussed help, you told me to pray for a miracle while you looted my future. She flinched. I know we made mistakes. Terrible mistakes. But Kendall, the baby, they have nothing. They have each other, I said coolly, and Kendall has her miracle. Isn't that what you wanted? A joy for the whole family. Please, Stella, she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. Actual tears. I wondered if they were real. Alone. Anything. For the baby's sake. I looked at her. This woman who had so callously dismissed my suffering, who had actively participated in my potential death sentence. There was no triumph in seeing her like this, no real pleasure. Just a cold, hard finality. Ingrid, I said, my voice even, the answer is no. You are all living the direct consequences of your actions. Every hardship you face, you authored yourselves. You sowed the wind. Now you reap the whirlwind. There's a certain justice in that, don't you think? She stared at me, speechless, the fight finally draining out of her. Now, if you'll excuse me, I said, gesturing towards the door, I have a company to run. A company built on the ashes of the life you tried to destroy. She stumbled out, defeated. I didn't watch her go. The revenge was complete. It wasn't a fiery, passionate thing, but a cold, calculated dismantling. It was satisfying, yes, in a detached sort of way. There was no guilt, only a profound sense of vindication, of balance restored. The scars were there, of course, etched deep, but they were a reminder of what I'd survived, what I'd overcome. My future was bright, filled with purpose and the quiet strength of knowing I had faced the worst and emerged not just alive, but powerful. Karma, I mused, sometimes needs a firm, guiding hand. They told me to pray for a miracle. They never specified whose miracle it would be. Turns out it was mine, and their downfall was just an unexpected but not unwelcome side effect.